and welcome to another episode of Matter Africa. I am Blessing Akbera, and today we'll be discussing addiction in women. A history of violent trauma is more common among women with drug addiction. However, due to both biological and environmental factors, addiction in women is different enough that it affects. Part of this is due to difference in the response to stress between men and women. Though the reasons are unclear, women are more likely than men to relapse into substance abuse in response to a stress trigger and gives in more easily to situations that triggers cravings. Due to the fact that there are many unique factors that need to be considered when recognizing and treating addiction in women, it's important for them to seek out programs that will address specific issues and needs. In this episode of Matter Africa, an expert who's a psychiatrist will be telling us more on the above issue. And we began by asking what motivated her into being a psychiatrist.
Happened was, when I was applying for residency training in America, which is where I did my psychiatry, I had offers, to do internal medicine, family medicine, or psychiatry. But the program in psychiatry was affiliated to Columbia University, which is a very good school in America. And Nigerians, were already in the program and they were doing very well. So it kind of came down to the why am I choosing between internal medicine and psychiatry. And I chose psychiatry because when I interviewed for the program, I had a very strong feel about the program and I felt it would be a good place for me to spend the next 4 years of my life. So that's really how I chose psychiatry. It really came down to a decision between internal medicine and psychiatry. And the fact that Nigerians were in the program, they were doing very well, they were happy, that sort of sealed the deal, for me.
That's wonderful. Now, talking about psychiatrists, it comes to mind like, you go to a place where people are mad people, you see people who are mentally not balanced,
Yeah.
and then you try to figure out how do you handle the situations where you, as a lady, to first off as a lady,
Yeah.
and then you have this kind of situation where you have strong, able-bodied people who are mentally destabilized, and
Yeah.
you're trying to control. I mean, how has it been so far? And then it comes with addiction. Now, that is even the topic for today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, addiction. I mean, what does it really come because they're addicted to something,
Mm-hmm.
or it just comes on a general way, or in a general way rather,
Yeah.
that people just get mentally? Is there something that associated to it, or it's just a natural thing?
Well, one thing, your first question, there's a myth that psychiatric patients are violent, mostly violent. Most of the time, they're actually more afraid, that they're going to be harmed themselves. They're very vulnerable. They're just like any other person, but without vulnerability, And so it's more likely that they'll harm themselves and that they will harm another person. So the percentage of psychiatric patients that are violent are really, really minor. And since I came back to Nigeria, I haven't actually seen that much. So that was your first question. When you talk about addiction, you have all kinds of addiction. It's really the compulsive use of a substance. When you talk about drug addiction, or of an activity, maybe when you talk about sex addiction or gambling addiction, even when there are negative consequences, the person continues to engage in that behavior or use that substance because they need to do that in order to feel normal. So that's really the definition of what an addiction is: the compulsive use of a substance in spite of negative consequences of use of that substance, to a point where the behavior takes over their life.
They're no longer in control.
They lose control. The hallmark of addiction is the loss of control.
What is the problem of women having addiction?
Yeah. So addiction in women is different from addiction in men. Women tend to get addicted faster. They tend to have more serious addiction. Even when they're treated, they tend to relapse quicker. You know, so a man can what a man can tolerate in terms of drug use, a woman cannot take half of that. You know, because they have smaller, on average, smaller body mass, and also the female hormones. You know, you have also unique issues with addiction in women in the sense that women get pregnant, men don't. And so you can have addiction in pregnancy and all kinds of consequences for the unborn child. And even when the child is delivered, that, you know, you can have problems in the neonatal period because of that addiction.
Okay, talking about unique nature, what are the unique need of women with substance use disorder in women, like pregnant women that are highly addicted? What is that unique need of women?
Well, I think one major thing is to reduce the stigma. A lot of women are not coming out, even when they have alcohol addiction, when they have addiction to other drugs, because of the stigma. Because it's more stigmatizing for women to have an addiction than it is for a man to have an addiction in our society. So one important thing is to address the stigma so that it becomes okay for women who have addiction to seek.
Come up and speak out.
Yes, to come up and speak out and seek help.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so how do we addiction? How do we add that? How does it differ from men and women?
Yeah, so you know, female addiction is a more severe entity. With smaller amounts of the substance, you can get addicted.
Wow.
As a woman compared to a man.
Okay.
You know, a man can take up to 2 drinks or more to get addicted. A woman without 1 drink, half of that amount can get addicted.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a more serious illness in women. And that being said, less women come forward for treatment because of the stigma. And then, you know, for women, it can also affect them in pregnancy, and also with the baby, it can affect the baby, you know, after the delivery.
I've seen cases where you have a mentally destabilized woman, a mental woman who has been walking on the street, and then she's heavily pregnant and she gives birth, and then she takes all kind of things. It could be substance, whatever she gets, she takes in. Now she at the end of the day she puts to bed and she has a healthy delivery. The baby is healthy. How do we connect that? I mean, she's not being treated, you know. How do we connect that? How is she able to manage that all through the pregnancy and all of that, and then giving birth to a very healthy baby?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when the mother's addicted, the baby's addicted. So, you know, what happens when the baby is born is that they may have withdrawal from that drug because they're no longer exposed to that drug like they were exposed to when the mother was taking it when they were inside the womb. And so they have all kinds of problems, feeding difficulties, they can have seizures, they can have vomiting, dehydration, diarrhea, you know, they can have congenital abnormalities, you know. So, you know, most of the time these children will have to be nursed in neonatal intensive care units. If the mother is lucky and the child doesn't really show symptoms, you know, which is rare, you know, then you know, you have to, you know, treat the mother and the child, you know, and that would involve parenting classes and, you know, support for that family unit. So it's not just the mother, it's the care of the mother and the baby as a unit, and maybe the father too, there's a father involved.
Okay, so at what point do women get to know that they're addicted to something, to maybe substance, to alcohol, to whatever addiction they find themselves? At what point do they get to realize?
At the point when they lose control. You know, at the point where that becomes the main focus of their lives, is to get that drug or to do that gambling or to, you know, sexual addiction, depending on the type of addiction. So, you know, the loss of control, the impact, it begins to have an impact on your family. If you're in school, it begins to affect your grades. If you're in a relationship, it begins to affect your relationships. If you're working, it can start to interfere with your capacity to deliver on the job. So, you know, that loss of control is really the hallmark of addiction. The difference between somebody that's just casually taking it and somebody that's actually addicted.
Talking of control seems to be the center of everything
that's right.
you do. So what then do you think are the solutions?
Well, the solutions are, getting an evaluation, first of all, as soon as possible. And, once you have that evaluation, if you're actually, addicted, and you have a use disorder, as you define it according to DSM-5, then you can get treatment. Sometimes you have, apart from detoxing you off the medication, for a period of time, then you have, sometimes they can give you replacement therapy, some drugs that can prevent you from wanting to use those drugs, and then you have psychosocial support, which is counseling, where your psychologist, your psychiatrist will, teach you coping skills, how to manage the urge to use, how to repair those damaged relationships that were damaged as a result of your addiction. So treatment, there's addiction treatment, and that can be on the outpatient or on the inpatient. But it starts with an early evaluation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what are the mental institutions really doing to these people that are highly addicted to these substances? You see the young ones are taking all sort of substance.
Yeah.
It's amazing how
Yeah.
they get addicted to this thing,
Yeah.
and they seem to not to do something
Yeah.
otherwise
Yeah.
if they are not fully taking this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
how has the mental institution helped so far? I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that we need to throw our concerns. So
Yeah.
how have they been helping?
Yeah, so we need to do more work. We need to do more work. We're having a lot of young people getting addicted, and that starts with different levels of prevention. Addiction is a disease of adolescence. Usually it starts between the ages of 12 and 17.
Yeah.
So having a systematic and disciplined approach to preventing our young people from actually starting the habits in the first place. That thing that they're searching for sometimes is peer pressure, because they want to be cool, they want to be the cool kids, and other people are using, or they think that other people are using. Sometimes it's coping with stress. Sometimes they have anxiety, worries, and sadness. Sometimes they've been physically abused or sexually abused. So identifying the vulnerable young people before they ever start, using the substance, and, educating them about the risks of using, giving them that support, that love, that nurturing. A lot of people are addicted because they're searching for happiness, and they think that they're going to find that happiness
Being addicted.
in the drug, because the drug makes them feel good. That's why people use it. It makes them feel good. And they're not getting that from their environment, and so they're turning to the drugs to give them that something, that comfort. So we need to find comfort for these people, for these young people, mostly. And some people talk about boredom. A lot of people, when you talk to a lot of addicted people, they talk about boredom. We need jobs for these young people, social stimulation, work stimulation, so that thing that the drug is doing for them, you substitute it with something better, something that will make them feel good about themselves, that doesn't involve binding them to a substance for the rest of their lives.
With that being said, let's come back
Yeah.
to your profession.
Yeah.
How has it been? The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. How has it been?
Well, for 18 years I was overseas, and I was treating non-Nigerians mainly. So it's a wonderful thing to be back and to be treating my fellow Nigerians. To offer that service, to my fellow Nigerians that I've been offering to, non-Nigerians for so long. So I'm happy to be back. It's been an experience. We're seeing a bit of different flavor. We're seeing a lot of psychosis and addiction, which which is something that is quite common here. The ups and downs. There are not enough of us. We're not that many. I think in Abuja we're 10 or so. So, and that's for millions of addicted people, hundreds of thousands of addicted people. So, I look for, a situation where the development of addiction treatment services, to be more robust.
Okay.
You know, there are things that we have in the US, you know, and other parts of the world that we don't have here. We don't have any 12-step program, which is the cornerstone of addiction treatment. So, you know, it's you know, where we lack, you know, facilities, you know, to help the addicted, you know, in a comprehensive way. So it seems almost as if, you know, I mean, we're doing the best we can with what we have. And, you know, but the illness is such a huge problem. I mean, you have in some cities, 1 out of every 3 households is affected by either codeine or marijuana or cigarette nicotine addiction. So it's quite a huge problem. You know, we need all the help we can get from government, from the private sector, so that we can treat our fellow Nigerians and they can live healthy lives. You know, they can contribute to the society, to the economy. You know, as long as they, you know, get the addiction part of their lives taken care of.
Thank you very much for having me here today. That was so informative and so encouraging for the addicts out there. I'm sure watching this you'll know 1 or 2 steps on how to carry on with your lives. It's not by just finding solace in drug use, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we were able to listen to this and have you also talk with us on addiction. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having our time on today's episode. We really appreciate that. Was really, really informative. But then again, drug addiction has become one of the serious social problems in many developing as well as developed countries. Even sadder is the fact that several drug addicts cannot afford to make a purchase of expensive drug, so much so that in the end they have to resort to such activities as theft in their homes. Well, here is what I would say to you out there. If you're struggling to overcome an addiction, no one needs to tell you it's tough. So stay free of every kind of addiction, be it alcohol, drugs, or whatever substance you're using, and live a healthy life. That's why we'll call it a wrap on today's episode of Matter Africa. Until I come your way again, keep watching Television Nigerian. I am Blessing Akbera. Do have a lovely day.